Hi, everybody. The school year has just begun for kids and young adults around the country. So we thought this would be a good time to talk about the growing number of college programs for people in midlife and later life. Now, I'm not talking about those one-off continuing education classes on things like great movies or the Civil War, although those can be great too. But I'm talking about these programs about personal growth, about introspection, exploration. They're designed to help you figure out your next chapter and maybe even who am I? Now, after these programs end, some graduates go on to start work at nonprofits and social impact businesses, or they take on public service duties, or they teach or mentor. It's all about sort of finding fulfillment after going through one of these programs. You won't get a degree, you probably won't have to take exams, but you might get a new lease on life. And I did an article about this recently for Next Avenue, and I spoke to Bonnie Zavon. She's the project manager of what's called the Nexel Collaborative. These are schools that have these programs. And she said, we hope the students don't just go back to their same lives. And from what I've heard, a lot of them do not. Before we get into these programs and the different ways you can take them, I want to ask my friends, Pam and Terry, what do you think of the whole idea of midlife reinvention programs at college? Pam?
Well, Richard, Terry, I say this gives a whole new meaning to seniors in college. Senior year. Okay, so I gave this a great deal of thought because I think that, it sounds really superficial. Like, should I go back and take some classes because I can earn more money and reinvent myself? But it's a deeper question because, it really does make you stop and say, I probably have 25 more years of life after I retire. If I am healthy and I have a reasonable feeling about my life expectancy, then yeah, I really need to figure out if I want to reboot, if I want to refresh, and I want to reinvent myself and not just, if I do want to continue earning a living, do I want to do something that's brand new? Do I want to learn something? I guess the question I would have, Richard, is at this point in life, is it a heavy lift? I mean, is it a big, huge challenge? Is it too much of a challenge if I'm thinking about going back to school? Those are some of the things that I would be wrestling with.
Those are great points. Terry, what do you think about this
Yeah,
idea?
I can hear people thinking, wait a second, are they really talking about stopping what you're doing and reinventing yourself just at the point when you are facing college tuition for your kids and your mother is ill and you're wondering who of your brothers and sisters are going to chip in to take care of her? And you think people out there have the luxury of saying, okay, I'm at midlife and I think I'd like to reinvent myself? I think it's a very special group of people, and we should acknowledge that, who have the not only financial flexibility, but the emotional flexibility to confront where they are. I assume you're talking about people maybe in their late 50s, early 60s, not that you're retired and now what, but thinking about another aspect to your life. And if you do have that flexibility, both financially, because obviously going back to school, it's either night school or correspondence, but it's still going to take time for homework and for doing the studies, take time away from your everyday life. So you have to sort yourself out. It's a very interesting question you've raised, Richard. And I thinking back to my friends at that stage, and that is backwards for me at this point, and thinking, I don't know how many, number one, could have done that, and number two, would have thought that was an option. So that's what I'd love to hear you talk about. Why? How can it be an option for someone to take this break at midlife?
Well, I think the reason it's becoming more possible for some people to do is what's changing in these kinds of programs. When they started out originally, they were from places like Harvard and Stanford, and they were a year long, and they were on campus, and they were very expensive. And so that was a very niche audience. People who were able to do it loved it, but a lot of people could not afford to do that, couldn't take the time, couldn't afford the cost of it. These days, the latest crop of these midlife college reinvention programs are often much shorter. They're not, some are, but many are not a year. Some of them are 4 weeks or 6 weeks or a few months. Many of them are much less expensive. Maybe they're $3,000 or $4,000. They're not $60,000 or $70,000, although some of those still exist, but many of them are not like that. And a lot of them now are virtual or hybrid. So you can take classes online, either from home or wherever you happen to be. Some of them you'll go back to campus for some of the classes, but most of them are not going anywhere else. So you don't have to necessarily relocate and give up your life. It's just sort of what you're going to be doing with this new free time you have when you've left your full-time job and you're now ready for the next chapter of your life. These programs are small. They can have about 20 to 30 students. As I say, they can go 4 months to a year. I mentioned Yale is about to start one. The University of Southern California is about to start one. Claremont Graduate University, Boston College. These are all new programs. And then there are other ones from places like Notre Dame, University of Colorado, University of Texas. The Claremont Graduation University's program is called SOAR, S-O-A-R. And the University of Colorado, Denver's program is called Change Makers. They're both 4 months long. They each cost under $4,000. The ones at Yale and Boston College and Harvard and Stanford, they often go for like $60,000 or more. They're often for a longer period of time. The one at Yale, interestingly, is going to be co-run by the guy who created Encore.org, Mark Friedman. I'm a huge fan of what he does. And so I've been really impressed with what they're trying to do here. A great part of these programs is that you're not just learning from the instructors, although you are, but you're also learning from the other students because they're all at the same stage of life that you're at. And so they're wrestling with the same things. So you hear from them, well, what are you thinking about? Or what are you dealing with? Or how did you deal with that? And then you might get ideas from them because they've been through this. They've made some mistakes that you can avoid, or they've done some things that you say, gee, I might want to do that. So now that I've said a little bit more about it, I'm going to ask you again, what do you think about this idea of learning from people like you to figure out your next chapter? Mostly when you go to undergraduate college or graduate school, you're only learning from the professors. But here, it's not just that.
Well, wait, you didn't, I missed something. Maybe I missed something. What's the curriculum in these? What's the, do they have different topics? How to suddenly become an executive?
How to become an entrepreneur.
Transition to, I mean,
Well,
are they all different?
Yes, each one has a different curriculum. They all, I would say, want to help you sort of figure out your next chapter, but they do it in different ways. So I'll tell you about a few of them, and you'll hear a little bit about how they are different. So Boston College, their program is called Companions, and it's for accomplished professionals with at least 20 years of experience. What makes their program unique is they have an emphasis on spirituality and companionship because Boston College is a Jesuit college. It's got a commitment to the common good. So that's all about what they're about. And so that's what this program is about. It's a 1-year on-campus program. It starts in January. And then they also have something interesting. Nobody else is doing this that I've seen. They have a 1-week pilgrimage to Jesuit sites in Spain and Rome, and an optional 5-day silent retreat in Massachusetts. So if that sounds like something that's intriguing to you, you might want to look into that. You're not going to find that at other schools. Most schools don't do anything like that. Now, USC's program, which is about to start, it's called the Distinguished Leaders Program, 9 months long, starting in October. Their focus is on social impact through a collaborative approach. And their classes are going to be taught hybrid, 4 weeks on campuses, the rest of the time remote. And Yale's is called the Experienced Leaders Initiative, or ELI, as in Eli Yale. It's going to be big on intergenerational learning and interaction. So they're going to be very much about not just learning from the professors and the other students your age, but also from younger people who are going to be helping teach you things and you're going to learn from them. That's going to be 6 months long. So Terry asked what the curriculum is. As you can tell, it's all over the lot. A lot of them are helping you figure out what you want to do next. Some of them, as Pam said, are about entrepreneurship, but some of them are about all kinds of other things that are not about, finances. They're about all the other parts of this next chapter.
Richard, let me just ask, is there one website where you would find all these things? I mean, it's so intriguing. How do you find this stuff?
Well, you can read the article I wrote on Next Avenue all about it, but you can also go to the Nexel Collaborative, Nexel, which has a list of all the colleges and universities that are doing it. You can go to the websites of the colleges that I just mentioned, and it's pretty easy once you start Googling for midlife college reinvention programs. You'll quickly start being able to see them. So yeah, there are places to go, but you can do a lot on your own too. Pam, sorry?
I was joking. I said midlife crisis program. It would be for me. I have 3 thoughts on this. And it goes under the big category of why would I do this? Okay. So number 1, it would be because I want to get out of the house. I'm serious. You know how many people we talk to who, you know, their spouse is now at home with them and they're both retired and they're like, you know, so it could be, I want to be in that environment. I want to be back in a classroom. I want to be with other people. No matter what, learning from other people is going to be stimulating. This thing is going to be, this whole idea is so stimulating no matter what you're doing. So number one, I need to get out of the house. Number two, it's because I want to gain some courage to be able to take on a new career later in life. And I need the courage, and I'm going to get that from being around other people who are doing the same thing I am at the same time. And damn it, we're going to do it. And the third is money. It's because I really do want to do something different than I've done in the past, but I want to continue earning an income. And that's where an alternative to this could be something like, or could come in combination with this. But you could look at things like, you know, comparing it to, I love art. Maybe I'd want to be a docent at the local, at a really cool art museum. Or, you know, the archivist, or, you know, learn to be an engagement manager, a merchandising professional, or an adjunct professor. Maybe I want to go back and teach public school. Maybe I want to be a tour guide. Maybe some of these things don't require college. Maybe some of them do. But I think that the common denominator here that's so cool about this, that goes much deeper, is why do I want to do this? And if you stop and you ask yourself, you know, what's up, you're going to get, this is very stimulating. You're going to get a lot out of being with other people in the same, you know, kind of situation where they want to go back and reinvent themselves. And that in and of itself, I think, is very, very, you know, valuable. The only flip side I have is maybe one story that this reminded me of my friend, Cynthia, who, when she was 63, she decided to do this in order to change her career trajectory. Okay. So she took completely different classes and something completely different. She wanted to be an adjunct professor in this case. So she did that. And, you know, you get the tuition breaks, of course, you get all this wonderful help and support, but she got tired of it like halfway through. She got fatigued with it. So she put in all this time and she invested in it. And then she was like, oh, halfway through, I don't think I really want to commit to this. That's why I come back to, you got to decide what level commitment you want to make to this, because you're going to school and you are going to commit resources and time.
And I think that's why some of these programs decided that they're not going to be 1 year long. They're going to be shorter because some people just don't want to commit that much time, or aren't sure they can do it, but they can manage with 4 weeks or a few months, especially if it's not every day, all day. It's some part of the day, some days of the week. And a lot of people say,
Oh,
why can't
that's
I do that in my
really nice
schedule?
flexibility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just recently, I just was a guest at one of these programs, the University of Colorado's Changemakers program, and they asked me to come in to talk about what I call unretirement. And there were about 30 students. They were all online. It was a Zoom call. Most of them were in Denver. I was in New Jersey. And they were very curious to hear, like, you know, how do I figure out my identity in this stage of life? And how do I not be bored at this stage of life? And how do I just start again? And I think a lot of people have a hunger for this kind of information, and they're looking for places to get it. And the colleges are one place to do that.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's just something that, you know, we might have heard about, but it's fascinating when you look at the opportunities that are there, because our whole world is about what's going to happen when you actually stop working.
We have a wonderful website, friendstalkmoney.org, and for sure we will post the link, because I think everybody's going, what was it? What did he say? What the website? We'll post the link to your column on this, and of course the link to that website where you could search for this kind of programs. Or I suppose, Richard, since everybody's getting with it, I have a funny feeling that colleges need to make more money, and they are recognizing there's a limit to how much they can charge and how much families are willing to pay. I have a sense that the worm is turned, so to speak, on the cost of higher education, and that they recognize their facilities are there and are trying to attract people from a different generation. So I suspect that if you call your local community college, you might find, is there a term for this, Richard, that's generally being used now? This midlife or back to, or what do you call that?
Yeah, you know, they all have different names. I would say midlife reinvention is kind of the phrase that I was hearing a lot. But they use different terms. Often they talk about leaders, that sort of thing. But they have different names. And I guess I would say that, and one of the things I wanted to mention was, although the cost can be expensive, sometimes it is, some of the programs often have discounts as well. So for example, Yale's new program, which is taking applications through early November, they're going to be offering a 15% discount for people who work in the nonprofit sector or government, because those jobs typically don't pay as high as corporate jobs. And so they don't want to exclude those people from taking something like this. And I think you're right that in some ways, colleges are looking for some extra revenue, but they also realize they've got these great professors and they've got these great facilities, and that education doesn't have to stop when you're 21 years old or 22 or 23, that people, especially these days, many people want to keep learning throughout their lives. And sometimes it's about, art history, but sometimes it's about themselves, and it's
Right.
about
Yeah.
purpose and meaning. And so I think they're saying, gee, how can we be helpful to people and maybe make some money at the same time? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, I have one more question. This just cropped up right now, is I'm thinking about the value of being together in the same room. And I'm thinking about what Terry said about resources, and you got a classroom there. Richard, any idea what percentage of these classes coming together are Zoom versus on campus?
I'd say most of the newer ones are mostly Zoom. They're the hybrid model. There are still some that are on campus. They tend to be the longer ones, but more and more of these are people are saying we would prefer to do this from our own homes, and maybe yes, we'll come to campus sometime for a couple of days, as these programs sometimes do, but mostly they'd rather do it from home on Zoom because we're so accustomed to doing it, like we're doing our podcast right now. So that's something that they couldn't have done a few years ago. Now more of them are offering it that way because they're finding people want to get their education that way.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's cool. Thank you.
Sure, of course. Before we close, Terry, I guess I wonder anything else, any thoughts you have about who might want to consider enrolling in one of these programs or taking one, or anything else that
I just think you've opened a lot of eyes, Richard. Thank you. It's not the ordinary course of things. It's not what you think about as you think about the progression of your life or your career. My personal motto is the only sin in life is being bored. So if you are on the cusp of being bored, it's up to you to change it. And Richard, I think you've brought up a fascinating new way to approach looking around the corner. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Terry. Thank you, Pam. And I hope for our audience that the episode opened your eyes a little bit to the idea of going back to college later in life. So I guess all I can say is class dismissed.
Friends Talk Money is funded in part by a grant from the Investor Protection Trust. The IPT is a nonprofit organization devoted to investor education. Since 1993, the IPT has worked with the states to provide the independent, objective investor education needed by all Americans to make informed investment decisions. Visit investorprotection.org. We also receive support from the North American Securities Administrators Association, known as NASA. It's the oldest international investor protection organization. NASA's members include state and provincial securities regulators from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico who serve on the front lines of investor protection. Recognizing that education and awareness are powerful tools in the fight against investment fraud, NASA is pleased to sponsor Friends Talk Money. Here are 3 important tips to help you protect your money from fraud. With investing, there are always risks, so be cautious of anybody telling you that a certain investment is guaranteed. You should also proceed with caution if somebody is promising very large investment returns. This is a common red flag for investment fraud. Last and most importantly, be sure you're working with a licensed or registered financial professional. You can check your advisor and make sure they're licensed by visiting brokercheck.finra.org. NASA is your partner in keeping you safe and helping you avoid investment frauds. Visit nasa.org and click on the Investor Education tab to learn more.